Alright, yeah, welcome back to some more Magic Duels. This week we are going to be taking a look at a Temur energy deck, but before we get into that, this video is sponsored by 5 Color Combo. If you check the description, you will find a link to their website, which you can find their merch store for some customized tokens made by real Magic the Gathering artists, as well as a Kickstarter to a brand new app as well. If you want to check that out, see if it's something that you want to back. If it is, back it, and it will become a thing. Alright guys, so let's look at the deck, shall we? So, Temur energy deck. Essentially, what we are trying to do, and this is a really fun deck because it's just got so many win conditions. What we're trying to do is take crappy little cards like this that generate small amounts of energy, like the Thriving Grubs and stuff like that, and build up to a large amount so that we can try finish off the game with either burning out our opponent with 6 damage per trigger, or making 6/6 tokens and going very big, or even going very massive with the Electrostatic Pummeler. So, how do we make energy? So we use little creatures like Thriving Turtle, so that is a 1 blue mana 0/3 creature turtle. When Thriving Turtle enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. And when it attacks, you may pay 2 energy. If you do, put a counter on it. So, essentially, what we want to try and do is generate as much energy as possible and build it up over quite a long period of time, and then just splurt it all out over our opponent. So, we play our 1 mana card, we get 2 energy. We use that energy to either put counters on the Thriving Turtle, but we actually don't want to do that. We want to save it for bigger and better things. There is occasionally times when you want to put counters on your creatures, but for the most part, we want to try save up for things like the ultimate ability of this Renegade. So, yeah, so that's Thriving Turtle. So not only are we getting into the battlefield triggers with our Thriving Turtles, we're also going to try and flicker our creatures as well. So we've got Essence Flux in here for 1 blue mana, instant speed, exile target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its own owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a counter on it. Not relevant, the spirit part, but what it is essentially it's a 1 mana trigger the enter battlefield effect again, so we can replay some of these Thriving Turtles and stuff like that, get the energy off for like 1 mana and stuff like that. We have some that create 3 and things like that as well. So, slip through space is a bit of an odd one. So we're trying to make really big creatures like Electrostatic Pummeler. When we've got about 12 energy, we can double all of its power and toughness essentially. But that doesn't do as much good unless we can get it through. So we can spend our slip through space to make our creatures unblockable. Also gets us to draw a card as well. So if it's useless, then we can cycle it that way as well. But really, we can make big creatures like the Electrostatic Pummeler, like the Hydra, and we can get in massive amounts of damage on 1 creature alone, which is pretty sweet, and our opponents can do nothing about it. So moving on, we've got Thriving Grubs. So for 1 and a red, we get another 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 energy. And when it attacks, you may pay 2 energy. If you do, put a counter on it. So it's essentially exactly the same as Thriving Turtle. Gets us 2 energy. If we want to attack with it, we can. We'll pay the energy we've just gained to do that. But, you know, we can sort of tempo our opponent out by going a little bit wide that way, or we can save it to go very big with our game-winning cards. We then have Longtusk Cub, 1 and a green for a 2/2. Instead of this one having an enter the battlefield effect, this one actually has a combat damage trigger. So when this card does deal combat damage to a player, we gain 2 energy. And we don't have to attack in order to put our 1/1 counters on Longtusk Cub. These are all very similar cards, you may notice as well. This one's a little bit different in that you only get the energy when you deal combat damage, and you can also instant speed put counters on Longtusk Cub as well. So we can use this guy and use our energy as a combat trick as well to force out really bad blocks for our opponent. So they might want to triple block to get rid of the cub, and then we'll just pay whatever energy we've got to blow them out. Things like that. Then we've got Sage of Charlie's Claim, 1 and a green for a 2/1, very crap. However, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 energy. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to flicker him several thousand times. and hopefully get a little bit of energy. One thing that you may notice about energy is anything that creates energy is usually quite a terrible card. So it's more about the payoff than it is the card itself. So we're generating all of this energy, and it's what we do with it that counts. So what do we do with it? Things like Harnessed Lightning. For 1 and a red, instant speed. Choose target creature. We get 3 energy. And then you may pay any amount of energy to deal that much damage to a creature. So if we've gathered up 12 energy, for example, we can get rid of big creatures like that. We can also do this for 0 as well, so we can do a 2 mana, gain 3 energy, that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a... what are they called? One's a gain mana. I can't remember now. But yeah, we can use it to gain 3 energy if we want for 2 mana, or we could use it to burn out our opponent's creatures as well. Get some big stuff off the board. We'll have generated a fair amount of energy by the time that ends up happening, so we might want to use it on that. So this is our removal suite, essentially. Then we've got Ether Torch Renegade. This is one of our game winners. So for 2 and a red, when it enters the battlefield, you gain 4 energy. You can pay 2 energy to deal 1 damage to target creature. So this will deal with Thought tokens, Servo tokens, just any sort of 1 toughness creature that might be in the way. Some spirits, for example, will also get damaged by this. So it's really good for that. You can clean up the board pretty fast. However, what we really want to do is use the 8 energy to deal 6 damage to target player. So when we've built up our energy, after a while, we will get Ether Torch Renegade down and we'll start pinging our opponent for as much energy as we have. So it won't take many triggers. By the time we're using this, we've probably got him down to about 10 health, something like that. So the 6 damage is pretty much a game ender at that point. We do, however, need to give him haste on occasion as well, but we do have ways of doing that I will show you later. We then have Architect of the Untamed. So for 2 and a green, we have a 2/3 Elf Artificer Druid. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get a energy. So we get an energy for every single time we play a land, essentially, which makes all of our lands pseudo ether hubs without the 5-colour benefit, in a nutshell. So this is also another one of our game-winning cards, in a sense. We can pay 8 energy to create a 6/6 Colourless Beast artifact token. So we can go very big in this sense. We can make some huge creatures if that's what we want to do. Mostly it's here so that we can gain energy off the lands, because we want to build that up. But if it ever becomes useful, we can make 6/6 creatures as well. We then have Imperial Voyager. So for... oh, I don't know what the hell that was. For 1, a green and a blue, we have a 2/3 Videlcan Scout with flying and trample. So by itself, it is a pretty sweet card. Well, it's a fairly average card, you know. 3 mana for a 2/3 flying trample isn't bad at all. But when it deals combat damage to a player, you get to put that many energy counters. So we don't have any pump in this deck, so this will only be 2. So this essentially, when it deals combat damage to a player, gain 2 energy. However, if they block with a 1/1, then it's obviously 1 energy in that sense as well. So we only gain as much energy as we deal damage with the Voyager. So if you wanted to try use this to get some damage, some more energy through a lot faster, then maybe you want to put some pump in. Not sure what you'd cut for that, but that would be an option. Something like Might of the Masses could pump your creature up pretty big and gain a lot of energy that way for very little mana cost. Anyway, Electrostatic Pummeler, 3 mana for a 1/1 that enters the battlefield and gives us 3 energy. That sounds very terrible. However, we can pay 3 energy and it gains +X until the end of the turn, where X is its power. Essentially, for 3 energy, we can double the power and toughness of our creature. So when we've built up enough mana, if we just attack them with this really, really pathetic looking 1/1, let's say, and they don't block it, then we splooge out all of our energy and double its life total, double its life total, double it, double, and we can probably get 20 life very easily, because it goes 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, that kind of thing. So we don't have to get many triggers in order for the Electrostatic Pummeler to be lethal just on its own. And it's not hard to get to the energy level that's required for that. Because we have things like Displace. For 2 and a blue, we have an instant speed flicker spell. So we get to exile up to 2 target creatures we control, and then return them to the battlefield. So we can use this to save our creatures. If our opponent tries to remove them, for example, we'll exile them and bring them back. But what it's really here for is to get more enter the battlefield triggers with our energy. Building up that energy, but we get to do it with 2 creatures instead of 1, unlike the Essence Flux. So we get to do that sort of thing, which is really nice. So we can get about 5 energy with this Displace, if we've got the decent enough board state. So that's why it's here. We then have Appetite for the Unnatural. So for 2 and a green instant speed, we get to destroy artifact or enchantment, and we gain 2 life. So this is here for the tutelages. This is here because we're in Kaladesh. Artifacts are a thing, so we can get rid of vehicles and things like that. It was very important we probably had something like this when we're in the Kaladesh set, because you can pretty much imagine that most people will be overly playing these decks, whether they're good or not. So having artifact removal and being able to get a little bit of life is also pretty cool. So that's why it's here. We then have Radiant Flames. Radiant Flames is the best when it is in a 3-colour deck, which we are currently in. So this is our board wipe. So for 2 and a red with Converge, Radiant Flames deals X damage to each creature, where X is the number of colours spent to cast Radiant Flames. So we can do this for up to 3. If we want to wipe for 2 as well, we have a lot of 3 toughness creatures on our board, and a lot of things that we're not really even bothered that they die. So wiping the board for us isn't too much of a problem. But yeah, we're running 3 colours, so it seems pretty important that we have a board wipe like this anyway, and it's probably the best board wipe that we've got in our colours, so that's what we're doing. Finally, we've got Bristling Hydra. So for 2 and 2 green, we have a Hydra 4/3. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 3 energy, and when you pay 3 energy, you get to put a 1/1 counter on the Hydra, pretty much the same as any other creature that we've got. However, this one gains hexproof until the end of the turn, so this is a control player's worst nightmare. Every single time they try to remove it, we make it bigger and make it untargetable. Board wipes are pretty much the only thing that are going to get this guy off the board if we're playing perfectly. There are occasions, obviously, where if we try to give it +1/+1 and they remove it in response, then we either have to pump it again or we lose it. So you've got to be really careful. There's no reason to put counters on your Hydra unless it's absolutely last minute necessary, because you always want to try trick your opponent into putting some removal spells on this Hydra so that you can give it hexproof in response, that kind of thing. So this can also be one of our game winners as well. We have ways of making it unblockable, and it just gets really big and out of hand after a while. So yeah, it's control player's worst nightmare, because you can just give it hexproof whenever you feel like it, and they kind of have to put some removal onto it from time to time just to bait you into giving it hexproof, which you just make sure that you have 2 triggers open and you're pretty much fine. So that's the deck essentially. Onto the land base, it's pretty simple. We've got 3 islands, 3 mountains and 3 forests, because we are pretty even along the board. We have mostly 1 drops in blue, then we have a red drop in 2, lots of green 2 drops, and then we just curve out at 4 really. So it's not too bad. We've got 23 lands, so we're about average for most decks as well. If we're running a bit too heavy on the lands, we do have Evolving Wilds, which will thin that number down a little bit in our deck as well, which means we'll draw less lands and more action. We then have all of the check lands as well, so Rootbound Crag, we have Hinterland Harbour, and we have Sulphur Falls. So these guys enter the battlefield tapped unless they control whatever colour they produce, essentially. So forest and a mountain, and forest and an island, island and a mountain. Speaks for themselves. So a lot of the times we'll Evolving Wilds into one of these as well. These do come into play tapped a lot more often than most decks do. Mostly because we don't have the, what are they called? The other lands that are, I don't know why I'm putting that one on. We don't have these lands, these island swamp ones, mostly because we're running so low on basics that I figured they'd come into play tapped as well. And we want to kind of get off to a decent start, since we have so many 1 and 2 drops. We want to be able to make sure that we're making our turn 1 plays, making our turn 2 plays, and then from that point on, it's kind of irrelevant how fast we go from there. So that's why we've only got these and none of these Cinderglades and stuff like that. We then have Handwear Battlements. So this is to give our creatures haste. That's quite important because one of our game winners is the Ether Torch Renegade, and the only way it wins is by tapping, and it can't do that if it's summoned sick. So for 4 mana essentially with the Handwear Battlements, we can get this guy into play and use his ability immediately, which could be catching our opponent off guard and maybe swinging in for the win that way. It produces colourless mana, which sucks a little bit because we have no reason to have colourless mana, but it is mostly here for the haste ability. And the second ability is completely irrelevant. We don't have the Handwear Garrison in this deck. We then have Ether Hubs. We have all 3. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 1 energy. So it produces colourless mana just by itself, or you can pay 1 energy to have 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. So this is really good as well for a 3-colour deck where we're kind of struggling to get the right amount of lands on time. It's essentially a 5-colour land, sorts us out on our mana base, produces energy if we don't need to use it as well. So we benefit a fair amount from the Ether Hub. It's just not to include on the lands. And then finally we've got Evolving Wilds. Just to thin out a deck because we are running quite the low curve. We don't want to get flooded on mana. And we're also running 3 different colours as well. So Evolving Wilds allows us to search for whatever colour mana we want. And it will also thin out decks so that we won't draw as many lands in the future, which is always what we want. So that is essentially the deck, guys. If it is what you... Well, if you enjoy the look of it, should I say, then you should watch the matches that should follow shortly after this. If you really enjoyed the look of the deck, then be sure to like and subscribe and all that jazz. Share it around. It helps me out a great deal and helps the channel thrive. And if you aren't sure about subscribing, then stay for the end card. See the rest of the content I've got to offer, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.